Hi everybody, this is a video to briefly summarize our properties and postulates cheat sheet. So here we have the addition property of equality that says if A and B and C are real numbers, and we know that A equals B, then A plus C equals B plus C. So basically, if we put it into an example of this line segment here, if I already knew that the piece AB is equal to the piece CD, I can add the piece BC to both sides and it will still be equal. The subtraction property of equality is very similar in the sense that it states if we already have two pieces that are equal, so A equals B, then if I subtract away the same thing, C, it will still be equal. So in the example of our line segment here, if I started with the knowledge of AC is equal to the same length of BD, if I take away both sides BC, they will still be equal. Now the reflexive property says if A is a real number, then A equals A. In the example of using our angles and line segments, that's just restating the fact that I know angle A equals angle A, and the line segment BC equals the line segment BC. As we scroll down to see the substitution property, remembering that it is very similar to our transitive property. Okay, so the only slight difference here is substitution property says if we have two things that are equal to the same thing, then they are equal to each other. In this case, if I had line segment CD was 8 inches, and I know that segment EF is 8 inches, then they must be equal to each other as well. The transitive property, think of it going down the line as one thing connects to the next. If angle A is equal to angle B, and angle B is equal to angle C, then we can also, by the transitive property, state that angle A is equal to angle C. So think of that kind of train or linked idea for the transitive property. Scrolling down, we have our postulates. These came from the previous quarter, but let's recap them really quick. Angle addition postulate shows if we have these two pieces of an angle, we can add them together to get the full measurement of the angle that they make up. The linear pair postulate shows that if we have two angles that form a linear pair, meaning they are two angles on a straight line right next to each other like this, then those angles are supplementary, meaning that they add up to 180 degrees. The segment addition postulate, we are talking just about segments, so not to be confused with any of our angle addition or the linear pair, because we are now talking about line segments and not angles. Okay, so it says if I had a line segment AB, so think of this whole thing as a line segment AB, and I had some other point in between them, then I can take those two pieces of the segment and add them together to get the full length of the line segment. Lastly, we have these few theorems that were also covered in the last video, the theorems cheat sheet, but let's talk about them one more time right here. So our right angle congruence theorem states that all right angles are congruent, which means if I see any right angles, if I am told that there are right angles or perpendicular lines, we will always have congruent angles. The congruent supplement theorem says if two angles are supplements of the same angle or of congruent angles, then the angles are congruent. So in our picture here, we're seeing two sets of linear pairs, right? Because angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary. They lie on a straight line. Angles 3 and angle 4 are supplementary and lie on that straight line. We're also given the fact that angle 2 and angle 4 are congruent because of those angle marks. So if those are congruent and both of these two sets of angles have to equal 180 degrees, that must mean that angle 1 is also congruent to angle 3. Lastly, our vertical angle theorem states that vertical angles are congruent, and here's that diagram to show you where we see vertical angles. Angles 1 and 3 are vertical, which means that they are congruent and same in measure. Same with angles 2 and 4. Remember that vertical angles only happen in this cross-like visual, and those angles will lie directly across from each other.